Alzheimer's disease, stroke, and Parkinson's. We had a lady whose son told us all about her condition. She had waited till she could retire. Her whole life was about retiring. She worked her whole life so that she could have the money and the place and everything. And when retirement day came, everybody decided to throw her this huge party. And everybody brought in their favorite, dessert and high fat, high cholesterol, sugary things. And after she ate all this stuff, she went home. The next morning, she woke up. She couldn't move half her face. Her balance was off. She had trouble remembering things. She had a stroke from all this high-fat food. You see, high-fat food affects the brain. Brain function and rich foods. Across the bottom, I have time after eating a high-fat meal. 6 hours, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Up this side, we have oxygen on the brain. And so, within 6 hours of eating a high-fat meal, the oxygen on the brain falls below 70%. What's more, it doesn't return to normal for 3 whole days. So, if you're going to sit an exam, you want to make sure you didn't eat a high-fat meal within the preceding 3 days. But who stops with one high-fat meal? 1 day. The next day comes along another high-fat meal. That curve starts all over again. It's going to be another day before you get your brain back. Another day, another high-fat meal. Next day, another high-fat meal. The moral of the story? Some people have never had a fully functioning brain. Now don't point any fingers. Don't name any names. I can see some thoughts going there. But yes, this is what affects the brain. And so this lady eats all this food, the oxygen on the brain goes down, probably have a blood clot or a hemorrhage or something, and you are in trouble. Now, stroke is a major risk factor for Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a lot of little lesions in the brain that could just be mini infarcts to start with. What is a stroke? Well, basically your brain runs on blood, and when the blood stops, you get a stroke. Or if it bleeds into the brain, you get a stroke. And so then part of the brain dies. And when it's dead, it's no longer functioning, and it might have been the part of your brain that runs your left side of your body, or your right side of your body, or your memory, or some part of your body you really would like to keep intact. So what are the risk factors for a stroke? Well, high blood pressure is the top of the list. And what's the cause of high blood pressure in the majority of cases?
Salt.
Too much salt. People eating lots of salt. There's other things. Stress will do it to you. I've got that down here at the bottom, not necessarily because it's the least important, but it's part of the factors too. Diabetes. Diabetics have more strokes. Smoking, tobacco is high on the list. It causes high blood pressure, but it also is a big risk factor for stroke. Heart disease. And whatever affects the heart, the blood vessels in the heart, it's probably going to affect the blood vessels in the brain, blood vessels in your eyes, your ears. You start losing your hearing. You start having trouble with your eyes. Alcohol, also related to high blood pressure. Oral contraceptives, sedentary lifestyle, just sitting around doing nothing. You see, when you sit around and do nothing, the blood vessels become inelastic. They become stiff, hard, brittle. And then they don't expand and contract like they should. And they're more subject to damage. High-fat diet. Hypercholesterolemia, which is high cholesterol. And weighing too much. Obesity is a big risk factor. So strokes have a lot of risk factors here that are important to attend to. Let's talk about this high blood pressure. One article, JAMA, looked at high blood pressure and projected what would happen if we could just lower people's blood pressure, the average blood pressure in America, by 5 points. What would it do? They figured they could cut out 23,000 strokes per year just by lowering blood pressure by 5 points. Some people worry that you might lower it too low. Well, what would be too low? 90 over 50 is not too low if you don't have symptoms. I've had people come to me, my blood pressure is too low, what do I do? And one of them said, my doctor told me I should go to McDonald's and start eating. Eat more salt, eat more fat, you get it up. Well, that's interesting. It probably is true, but it's unnecessary and not healthy to do that. Cholesterol. We said cholesterol was a big risk factor for stroke. And as the cholesterol goes up, especially as you get older, your risk of stroke goes up. People's cholesterol tends to go up as they get older. When we have normal cholesterol charts, it's by age group. And as you get older, it goes up. That isn't necessarily the way it's supposed to be, but that's what the normal trend is. Low HDL is associated with increased risk of stroke. HDL is the good cholesterol. It's the cholesterol that cleans up oils out of your body. Stroke and triglycerides. We've talked about cholesterol, now we've got to talk about triglycerides. When your triglycerides go over 200, which is high, your risk of stroke keeps going up. And we have different types of stroke, but all of them will kill you or do bad things to you. Well, why do I have ice cream and pie here for triglycerides? I thought triglycerides were fat, not sugar. Sugar will make your triglycerides go up. You see, your body doesn't have any place where it can store sugar cubes, no little boxes here and there. And so it has to convert it to something it can store. And so, yes, if your triglycerides are high, it's probably sugar. It's especially high fructose corn syrup. Tobacco. I mentioned that tobacco will do it to you. Smoke. It increases the risk of stroke by double. Heart disease, triple. Lung cancer, of course, 10 times. Other cancers, twice. And lung disease, 25 times. Salt and stroke. Dietary salt increases the risk of death from stroke. Not just stroke. I mean, a lot of people survive the stroke, but it increases the death rate. Your survival is going to be a lot less. Men on a high salt diet are significantly more apt to die from a stroke than those on a low salt diet. So if you're going to have a stroke, make sure you're on a low salt diet. Well, being on a low salt diet would probably prevent the stroke too. Meat and stroke. And here in the journal called Stroke, consumption of meat more than 4 times weekly is associated with increased risk of all strokes, and especially for first-time strokes. People who have never had a stroke before. Those are the people it's hard to predict, you know. It's not really hereditary. It's not really, doesn't really run in families, but you never know when the first, once they've had one, you put them on the risk list, and you think, okay, yeah, they're probably going to have another one, but first-timers. Hydration. And I'm going to talk about water in several of these categories, but drinking your water is important. If somebody comes to the hospital having had a stroke and they check them for their hydration, osmolality, then if they're very dehydrated, they're going to have a harder time keeping that person alive. So drinking your water preserves your life. Water is the elixir of life, huh? Yes. The answer is clear. Have you seen that? There's a book called that. There's another book out there, The Body's Many Cries for Water. Good books. All right, exercise and prevention of stroke. We said sedentary lifestyle increased the risk of stroke. On the other hand, exercising tends to limber up the body, keeps the blood vessels so that they relax more easily, so that they pulsate better with each heartbeat, so that they're less apt to bleed and cause a stroke, and less likely to make for clots that will cause stroke. Regular physical activity. Regular. So you don't want to just be, you know, the weekend warrior. Like, that's sort of dangerous just to exercise 1 time a week. It's best to be exercising at least 3 times a week. NIH and CDC, National Institute of Health and Center for Disease Control recommend 30 minutes of moderate physical activity on most, preferably all days of the week. And many of the other associations, like for cancer prevention and weight loss and so forth, are recommending an hour. Oh, come on. I don't have an extra hour in the day to go, exercise. Who has an extra hour? You don't have to do it all at once. You can do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, a little bit here, a little bit there. I recommend people take a walk after meals and maybe in the morning before their first meal. And, do 10 minutes each time and you've got it in. And those are good times, healthy times. They help with your digestion and other things. Strokes are prevented by eating good food, fruits and vegetables. So here's a study where they looked at servings of fruit and vegetables per day. And they looked at how that affected the different types of strokes. And so fruits and vegetables do reduce your risk of stroke. Especially cruciferous, that's like, what are cruciferous vegetables?
Greens.
Cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale. Reduce the risk of ischemic stroke. That's when the blood stops. So 3 servings of fruits or vegetables daily reduce the risk of dying of a stroke by 45%. But you can see we're looking at trying to get 8. You can cut it in half. So that's very good. All right, let's talk about Alzheimer's. What is Alzheimer's? What is it though? Well, if we look at the brain underneath a slide and we start looking for stuff, we know you have Alzheimer's if there's stuff that isn't supposed to be there, called amyloid plaque. What's amyloid plaque? Junk, garbage. It's basically proteins that are not supposed to be there. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive brain disorder that gradually destroys a person's ability to remember, to learn, to reason, to make judgments, to communicate, carry out daily activities. There's a lot of things that are associated with it. Now here I have something, aluminum. Have you heard of the connection between aluminum and Alzheimer's? Yeah. Well, a substance called amyloid collects in the brain. It is basically fried protein. Well, I say fried. It's not put in a skillet, but it's chemically oxidized, fried. And so amyloid has a high affinity for metals like iron. I have a friend down at Loma Linda that's doing research on brain lesions caused by too much iron. And he does CT scans and compares it to brain damage. Aluminum and zinc, which favor the generation of reactive oxygen species, oxidative stress, and triggers inflammatory response, oxidative stress, and you end up with burnt out spots in the brain. This increases free radicals and oxidative stress. Free radicals go around and they fry brain tissue, heart tissue, your eyeballs, your ears. So aluminum. Oh, wait a minute. What are these?
Aluminum.
Well, why do I have those there for aluminum?
An aluminum container?
Possibly.
Baking soda.
Baking soda. Most people's aluminum comes from baking soda. It's got aluminum in it. What are other sources of aluminum?
Cooking in your aluminum pans.
Cooking in aluminum pans. Soda pop in aluminum cans.
Something you take for your stomach.
Oh, Maalox.
Mainly.
Aluminum, that's right. Magnesium aluminum oxide.
There is aluminum in vaccines.
Vaccines. Now notice I put foods with large amounts of aluminum containing additives, baking soda, or aluminum from drinking water. Oh, why would aluminum be in drinking water?
I don't know.
All water processing, like when they take water out of the ditch down, the aqueduct down here, they process it with aluminum. My cousin runs a water treatment plant for a facility. They get water out of a ditch just like that, aqueduct. They process it with aluminum. They put in aluminum, I forget what it is. Aluminum, anyway, it's aluminum compound. And aluminum is a trivalent ion, 3+, and it tends to be a very strong ion, and it causes all the junk in the water to stick together. And then they supposedly filter it out, and they think they... So I was visiting my cousin. I went to his water treatment facility. I'm looking at all the tanks, and they've got all these paddles running in this big cement tanks, and he's putting aluminum in there. I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. aluminum? And people are drinking that? I said, now, do you test for what's in your water? He says, oh yeah. So he pulled out the papers with the test. I said, so do you test for aluminum? They weren't even testing for aluminum. I mean, so you're getting more aluminum than you think. So what do? We distill our water before we drink it. Stress. Oxidative stress, though. Oxidative stress. What is oxidative stress? Well, oxidation. What is oxidation? This is sort of a hard concept. Chemically, what it is one atom is hungry for electrons. He goes to another atom and he steals the electrons. That atom is now ruined, or at least he's now hungry for electrons. If this is a cholesterol molecule in your body, it's now hungry for electrons. It goes to a blood vessel and steals them from the wall of the blood vessel. And then the blood vessel gets a lesion in it, and you can have a plaque. So that's the chemical idea. Just to make it a little more practical, it's like a game of tag. Oxygen is it. It goes and tags something like cholesterol. Cholesterol's now it. It goes and tags the blood vessel, and the blood vessel doesn't have the ability to get rid of being it, and so it's stuck. So, on the other hand, in order to stop oxidative stress, you want antioxidants. Yeah, that makes sense, huh? That's why they call them antioxidants, fruits and vegetables. It's one of the most effective treatments for dealing with this oxidative stress. Protection against oxidative stress by micronutrients has been shown to delay the onset of Alzheimer's. There's a number of things they've tried. One that they studied down here at Loma Linda is pomegranates. Hey, there you go, Pat. Pomegranates. She's got a pomegranate tree. Pomegranates. And they tend to use the juice because that's an easy way to feed it to, people and animals and so forth. And when they fed pomegranate juice to mice who were artificially being treated with something to cause Alzheimer's, it really helped. They learned more quickly, and they had 50% less Alzheimer plaques in their brains. So pomegranate juice has gotten a lot of publicity since that article came out. But it's not just pomegranate. Why pomegranate? High in antioxidants. Obesity and diabetes quadruple, 4 times the risk of Alzheimer's. And it's basically the lifestyle it takes to support extra weight and problems with your blood sugar. Alzheimer's and caloric restriction. On the other hand, if you quit eating so much, before you get Alzheimer's, or after, but quit eating so much before you get Alzheimer's, then you tend to have less Alzheimer's, because overeating, on the other hand, is a huge risk factor for Alzheimer's. So people who spend their life going to restaurants and ordering what tickles the tummy and eating the portion sizes that the restaurant thinks are popular are in trouble. Caloric restriction is preventative in delaying the onset of amyloid neuropathy, Alzheimer's. And Ben Franklin had a good saying, to lengthen thy life, lessen thy meals. Well, that's good advice. Wonder where he thought up that. You think the guy had an inside line? I don't know. He was the one that wanted the national bird to be the turkey, though, so we can't give him too much credit. Okay, where do we learn about all this caloric restriction? Well, the Okinawan experience has been helpful. You know, the Okinawans, they live longer than anybody else. And National Geographic has talked about that. They eat 40% fewer calories than Americans. They eat less than the regular Japanese as well. And so they are people, a whole society that eats less. Compared to Americans, they're 75% more likely to retain cognitive ability. In other words, put in another way, 75% less likely to get Alzheimer's. They have 80% fewer heart attacks, 80% fewer breast and prostate cancers, 50% fewer ovarian and colon cancers, and 50% fewer hip fractures. So eating less is very helpful. In fact, we're learning from studies of animals in laboratory that the amount of food you eat affects your longevity dramatically. In fact, they took a bunch of mice and they fed them 50% less food than they really wanted to eat. Those mice lived 50% longer than mice that did eat as much as they wanted to eat. They had another group that they fed 65% less food than they wanted to eat, and they lived 65% longer. I mean, there's an end to that somewhere, but it's interesting that eating less made you live longer. We've come to the conclusion that perhaps in your lifetime you get to eat so much food. You just decide when you eat it. It's also true of your heart, that you get so many heartbeats in your lifetime, and when you've had your number, your time is up. And athletes, by exercising, slow their heart rate down, and so they spread those heartbeats out over a longer period of time. So you decide when you eat your food, when you're younger or when you're older. So how does this caloric restriction work? Well, it reduces the level of oxidized proteins. When you're eating less, you tend not to overload the system, and so you tend to produce less oxidized proteins in your normal life, your normal way of metabolism. It reduces DNA damage. You see, when you eat too much, it tends to cause free radicals and damage DNA. It reduces free radical formation, those oxidized proteins like cholesterol. And there's a higher level of enzymes that help reduce these oxidized products. Antioxidant defense enzymes. So, eat your antioxidants, eat less food. Very helpful. Now, rabbits. Are rabbits supposed to eat cholesterol? They're not supposed to eat my garden either, but they do it anyhow. But they are vegetarians. But when they feed cholesterol to rabbits, and then they check their brains, they discover that their brains start developing Alzheimer's lesions. Cholesterol is a huge risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Some reason we weren't made to eat cholesterol. It does a lot of bad things. We make cholesterol of our own, and we have control over whether it gets oxidized or not. But when you eat it, it's hard to control that. Mental performance. Dietary cholesterol has been shown to decrease learning ability and mental performance. So eating that cholesterol is definitely going to affect how well you do on tests. Dementia. Patients with elevated LDL cholesterol, and I'll explain that next month, I guess, have a 106% higher risk of cognitive impairment. Oh, boy. So if my LDL cholesterol is high, it's going to affect my thinking. It's like having a high-fat meal all the time, right? So this is a problem. Obesity and hypertriglyceridemia, if your triglycerides are too high, also produce cognitive impairment. The brain doesn't work quite so well. So these are problems with having too many lipids in your blood of margarine and lard. A study of 2,500 participants, higher intakes of saturated fat and trans fat. Where's trans fat come from? Margarine. Definitely from margarine. In a study of 2,560 participants, if they were eating saturated fat and trans fat, they had a decline in their cognitive ability over a 6-year period. So having these fats are definitely dangerous. In fact, I'm beginning to see in my studies on this that we human beings weren't really made to eat refined fats or extra fats. You know, in the Old Testament, didn't they say, don't eat the fat?
Right.
Isn't that what it said? Now, there's other things that are helpful that go beyond diet, and that is social relations. Having lots of friends helps reduce Alzheimer's. People with more friends were found to have better cognitive function and lower rates of Alzheimer's. So that brings us sort of to a section here I'm going to call social health. Because social health has so much to do with physical health. You find friends, you spend time with them. The strength of social ties influences our emotional vitality. which encompasses feeling happy and enjoying life, feeling hopeful about the future, having little to no anxiety or depression. So social health,
Stress management.
Stress management, helps with stress management. Compared to people with no social ties, isolated people, compared to isolated people, those with 5 or 6 close friends were 2.5 times less likely to experience cognitive decline over a 12-year period in a 12-year study. So having these friends greatly reduces your risk of Alzheimer's. So thank your friends for your cognitive ability. So how do we improve our social skills? Well, you can practice the one another Bible texts. I thought this was good. I got this out of a book. They looked at this and it's very interesting. Love one another. That's a social skill. Accept one another. What's a social skill? Pray for one another. That's involved in socializing and finding out what they need prayed for. Honor one another. Encourage one another. Carry one another's burdens. And serve one another.
There's a big one that's forgotten there.
Uh-oh.
Forgive one another.
Oh, thank you. Forgive one another. Yes. Remind me when we get home and I'll put that one in.
That's important.
All right. Alzheimer's deaths. This is the unthinkable. Okay, what's the unthinkable? Alzheimer's deaths? Alzheimer's is the 8th leading cause of death for people 65 years of age and older. Huh. Oh. Alzheimer's didn't used to kill people. In 1995, there were 21,000 people dead of Alzheimer's disease. All right. I call this slide my mad Alzheimer's disease slide because in a recent study, up to 13% of supposed Alzheimer's patients really had mad cow disease, Crutchfield-Jakob disease. There is a 3 times higher risk of developing Alzheimer's in meat eaters as opposed to vegetarians. Possibly because of this factor. So, but we don't have mad cow disease in America. I have a friend who's a physician in Northern California. A few years ago, he was a physician in another state. He had a patient came in, a lady with mad cow disease who died of mad cow disease. They found the cow who had mad cow disease. They killed the cow. Did that hit the news? Alzheimer's prevention. Let's talk about prevention here. Prevention is the best strategy. Blood pressure control. Oh, and I got to talk about blood pressure control. High blood pressure. Let's just hit on a statistic here. High blood pressure increases the risk of Alzheimer's by 70%. So this is huge. This is big. So blood pressure is important. Here we have a brain. Blood pressure control. They did a study on patients who had high blood pressure. They scanned their brains for Alzheimer's lesions. We call them white matter lesions. And they looked at people with high blood pressure. They found out that people with high blood pressure accumulated white matter lesions at 10 times the rate of the normal population. If you have high blood pressure, you're probably accumulating Alzheimer's lesions in your brain at 10 times the rate of normal population. They said, okay, we'll fix that. Here, folks, take a pill. Their blood pressure came under control with the pill, but it did absolutely nothing to slow the rate at which Alzheimer's lesions collected in the brain. Which leads me to believe that while blood pressure is associated with Alzheimer's lesions, the lifestyle that created the high blood pressure is what's really also creating the Alzheimer's lesions. So in order to stop the Alzheimer's lesions, you don't want to just bring the blood pressure down. That might just mean the blood isn't making it to the top of your head. Well, but you want to change your lifestyle that's causing both, and then you take care of them both. Healthy lifestyle. A healthy body supports a healthy brain. Yes, this makes sense, right? We say perfect health depends on perfect circulation. You want perfect circulation to that brain. Another thing that helps is ongoing education, strengthening the brain by exercise. That keeps the brain fresh. Julie's great-grandmother just passed away this last year down in L.A. She was 103. She was as sharp as a tack. I mean, we were talking. She was from southern Oklahoma. She told us where she lives in southern Oklahoma. She hadn't been there for, what,
Oh,
50, 100 years?
yeah.
Anyway, forever. And so I asked her about her town. How far is, is your town near Lawton? Because I'd been in southern Oklahoma. She says, oh, it was about 46 miles from Lawton, and there's this other town in between Lawton and there, and she had it just all in her mind right where it was. What did she do to keep her mind active? She read 3 books a week. 3 books a week.
And did county CrossFit. Was keeping busy.
Keeping busy.
Very socially active.
Very social. Regular physical activity is helpful, and cholesterol control. Okay, let's talk about intellectual health, since we're talking about keeping mentally active and engaged. You have to form a plan to keep your brain stimulated, because if you just sit down and do nothing, that brain probably won't be stimulated. And if you don't plan to stimulate it, you're in trouble. You know who Regis Philbin is? Regis Philbin is a talk show host, he's a game show host. And back in the late 90s, he started this thing, You Want to Be a Millionaire. He was 68 years old when he started that. He's got another show going now with some lady. I don't watch TV, but
He does it in the daytime.
in the daytime. But now he's in his 70s. He was almost 80, and he's still, going strong because he keeps on doing stuff.
Is television mental activity?
No. So he's not helping others with mental activity, is he? Television sends your brain into alpha waves. That's not good. Turns off your frontal lobes. Mental health with aging. Healthy older adults show no decline and perhaps actually improve in some cognitive skills. They don't have to become dull. And so if they're healthy and they work at it, they can improve in wisdom, judgment, creativity, common sense, coordination of facts and ideas, experience. Give you an idea, here's a lady, Grandma Moses. She's a folk painter, and these are some of the pictures she painted. She started painting, had never painted in her life. Started painting at 74 years of age. And she kept painting until she was 99 to 100. She produced quite a few pictures. Somebody finally discovered them in a drugstore near her house. They're for sale, and they were an art buff, and they, wow, this stuff's good. Started getting popular, and they actually had a holiday for her in New York for a while. A day off, Grandma Moses Day. So if you keep learning new things, learning stimulates the growth of dendrites in your brain. Creates additional neuronal networks. So you can bypass dead spots in your brain. And so that's important. So, when you have a road that's being fixed out here, you want them to have a detour around it. Well, this is the way you get detours. You may not be able to stop all the degeneration, but you can certainly keep the, detours going, so you keep some activity going there. Now, stress. We mentioned stress earlier. Research studies show that continual exposure to stress accelerates the decline in cognitive ability. Your brain has a memory. The memory is in the hippocampus. When you have stress, your cortisol goes up. The cortisol starts washing neurons out of your hippocampus. Have you heard it said that some people have repressed a memory? They forgot it? Well, in many cases, they just washed the neurons out of their hippocampus, never to be seen again. And so you don't want to lose all those neurons in that memory area. But stress does that to you. Mark Twain, I've been through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. In other words, we imagine a lot of stuff that never happens. And we stress out about it. Stress and Alzheimer's. Chronic stress. You think he has chronic stress, or you think he causes chronic stress?
Looks like it causes it.
Yes. Oh well. Chronic stress accelerates the onset and severity of cognitive deficits in Alzheimer's. Cognitive deficits. Proneness to psychological distress. In other words, things stress you out more than it stresses everybody else out, is associated with a higher risk of Alzheimer's disease. Two people can experience the same event. One will perceive it as stressful. Somebody else won't. And it's all a matter of perspective. Those prone to high distress had twice the risk of developing Alzheimer's. So that brings us to emotional health. Stress and emotional health. Let's just touch on that a little bit. Emotional health includes the ability to love and to receive love from family and friends. Emotional wounds can be a significant source of disability and symptoms. So if you were always beat up as a child by your mom or older brother or family, all these different abuses, then you might be more likely to have loneliness, stress, anger, depression, and Alzheimer's later in life. I have an article at home. I wasn't able to get down to the Loma Linda to pull up at the library, but it was going into all the different factors that increased Alzheimer's as far as stressful events early in life. Sort of a depressing thing to study, but what people go through. But if you've had those things, then you know you need to be more careful to follow all the preventative and other things we're talking about here. Emotional health, healthy emotions. You know, the fruit of the Spirit is a list of very healthy emotions, don't you think?
Yeah.
But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Okay, let's switch over to Parkinson's. Well, we don't really have to switch over because they're very related. Well, Parkinson's has a little different twist to it and some special considerations. What is it? What is Parkinson's disease? Well, common symptoms are tremors of the hands, arms, legs, or jaw, rigidity or stiffness in the limbs or trunk or face. We say they have a mask face. Slowness of movements. And the slowness of movements not only are slow, but they have a hard time initiating a movement. They stand there and they say, okay, I got to put my foot forward. Okay, I got to put my foot forward. Sometimes you have to help them lift their foot, and then they can start walking. But they have trouble initiating a new activity. Postural instability. They often fall backwards. Or impaired balance and coordination. And then associated is dementia, which could be Alzheimer's dementia or the like. Psychosis, anxiety, insomnia, autonomic dysfunction. What's autonomic dysfunction? The nerves that run your heart and your blood pressure, your sweating, your bladder are part of the autonomic nervous system. So those things get messed up. And mood disturbances. Trouble controlling their moods or the outbursts. More likely to be depressed. About half of them are depressed. Over 1 million individuals have Parkinson's in America. Second most common neurodegenerative disease next to Alzheimer's. So it tops the list there with Alzheimer's. And when does it onset? Usually 55 to 66 years of age. I've had people, though, come to me in their 30s and said, I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And so what do I ask them? Which antidepressant are you on? Because that is a huge side effect of antidepressants and antipsychotics. Parkinson's disease is a result of the loss of certain neurons called dopaminergic. They make dopaminergic neurons in the brain. Certain brain neurons in certain parts of the brain. You see, your brain has different nuclei, different spots, different centers where there's nerves that do things. There's one nuclei that's involved in telling you can move now and get you moving. There's another one that says don't move too much. In Parkinson's, the one that says don't move too much is hypertrophied, it's too big, it's too strong. And the one that says move is not very strong. And this is the problem. Free radicals increase brain inflammation and cause damage to these dopaminergic neurons. And so you're more likely to end up with Parkinson's. Antioxidants, on the other hand, are protective against these free radicals that cause damage to these neurons. So we're back to have I mentioned antioxidants before? Okay.
Don't remember.
Does a vegan diet reduce the risk of Parkinson's disease? It sure does. Diets high in animal fat and cholesterol, here we're back to fat and cholesterol again, are associated with a substantial increased risk of Parkinson's disease. Groups whose diets tend to be vegan or quasi-vegan, such as sub-Sahara blacks, rural Chinese, Japanese, enjoy substantially lower rates of Parkinson's. It's a lot less. So, whole people groups. Now, did I mention caloric restriction before? Eating less food definitely helps. Caloric restriction has recently been shown to protect the central dopaminergic neurons of mice from neurotoxins. Oh, what neurotoxins? Pesticides. Yeah. Pesticides are huge on the list of causing Parkinson's. Oh, yes. All right, so how do we prevent Parkinson's, especially with our diet? Well, eat a nutritionally balanced diet that contains adequate amounts of fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables have antioxidants. Do Twinkies have antioxidants?
Zilch.
No. So, choose foods high in vitamin C, B6, B12, very important for your nerves. Folate, very important for your nerves. And SAMe, acetylsalicylmethionine, methionine. Smoking increases the risk of Parkinson's. Parkinson's risk rises with the number of years of tobacco smoked. The more you smoke, the more likely to burn out those nuclei in your brain. Anxiety in Parkinson's. Not only do Parkinson's patients have more anxiety, but anxiety leads to Parkinson's. A high-level anxiety increases the risk of Parkinson's by 50%. Oh, I better take anxiety pills then. Okay, which pill do you want? How about Xanax? Okay. Taking anxiety pills further increases the risk. Another 10%. Oh, wait. Well, I was taking the pill to get rid of my anxiety. Yeah. But the pills don't stop the disease process. They just treat the symptoms. And then you're left with a bigger problem than you thought you had to begin with. Now, I put the title on this slide, The Will to Live. Why do I put the will to live on my slide with my Parkinson's patient? Well, the exercise of your will is hugely important to your physical health. You have to use your will. You can, in some cases, if you're getting cold, you can use your will to warm yourself up, throw off a chill. Your will is hugely powerful. In brain surgery studies, when they stimulate the brain to do things that the patient doesn't want, if the patient's awake and they tell the patient, decide not to do that, they can shut down that part of the brain. The will is hugely strong. In Parkinson's, there is an inability to put the decision to start moving into action. The will is compromised. So they looked at patients over a long time to see who would get Parkinson's. They discovered that people with poor willpower, who are inhibited, generally in life, depressed, very emotional, emotions out of control, and have lots of somatic complaints, always running to the doctor because something hurts or something doesn't feel good, and are not achievement-oriented, have no direction in life, their will isn't inactive, suffer significantly higher Parkinson's rates. So really, in some sense, you might say Parkinson's is the final common pathway of not exercising your willpower in your brain. Isn't that interesting? Okay, schedule. Now you remember, some of you have seen my video, I've given some of you the DVD, on autoimmune diseases. Oh, and obesity and diabetes. And I talk about having a very regular schedule. That a very regular schedule helps lower the risk of some of these diseases because it lowers inflammation in the body. Well, having a regular schedule is hugely helpful for Parkinson's as well, for the same reasons. Regularity in schedule is associated with less Parkinson's, better sleep, less motor disturbances, and less depression for the Parkinson's people. So having a regular schedule, getting up at the same time, having your meals at the same time, exercising at the same time, even drinking your water at the same time is helpful. It keeps your circadian rhythms on track. Well, why is that important? If your circadian rhythms are on track, you have better melatonin surge in the middle of the night. You have better cortisol surge in the middle of the night, both of which are helpful in lowering inflammation in the body. And melatonin is very antioxidant too. Okay, of water and constipation. How many here want to die of constipation? Oh, no, we don't want to die. Is there a downside to constipation besides hemorrhoids? And yeah, when you're constipated, it's trouble. Parkinson's patients tend not to feel thirsty. Oh, their whole life, even before they get Parkinson's. Not drinking enough water, and as a result being constipated, are huge risk factors for developing Parkinson's later in life. This was a huge study, 2004, where they looked at this and they watched people over time, and they found out that these people getting Parkinson's were not drinking enough water and they were always constipated. So, drink more water. How much water should you drink? Well, for our autoimmune disease talk, we talked about drinking 2 liters. 2 liters a day. Oh, what's that? 8-10 glasses. So drinking 8-10 glasses. So if you're having trouble keeping your water, getting your water, get a bottle that's, 2 liters. So this is my 40 ounces. So that's a little more than 2 liters. No, it's a little more than 1 liter, sorry. 2 liters would be... So I drink 32 ounces when I get up in the morning, and then I try to drink more during the day. So 8 to 10 glasses. Well, preventing aging. Preventing aging. That's what we're looking at, really. Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, stroke are all really associated with aging, right? So we want to stop aging altogether. How are we going to do that? Well, you can't really totally stop aging, but you can slow the onset of aging. That's good. Put it off a few years, and you can prevent the degenerative diseases associated with aging. Now, there's a lady that was down here in Loma Linda by the name of Hulda Crooks. When I was a resident, she came into the clinic for something. She kind of became famous because she climbed Mount Whitney every year until she was in her 90s.
She started at 65.
Started at 65.
That's the amazing part.
And she passed away at 101 in her sleep. No degenerative diseases, no diabetes, heart disease, cancer, high blood pressure. She was seeing us for a skin thing, probably from too much sun, but she was very healthy. So you don't have to have all those diseases. What causes aging? Well, biological clock, it tends to run down. We were given, 70 years, and if you get another 10 after that, great, Free radicals, those are always happening, both from what you eat and from just the metabolism in your system. There's also external sources, tobacco smoke, alcohol, drugs, and medications, and pesticides and chemicals. So you want to reduce the free radicals. Well, how do I reduce the free radicals? Well, I need to eat things that stop free radicals, antioxidants, fruit that has vitamin A, vitamin C, flavonoids. These neutralize the free radicals and lower oxidative stress in the body and the brain. Vegetables are high in vitamins as well that are helpful. Vitamin A, vitamin C, antioxidant phytochemicals. So you want these phytochemicals that are antioxidant. Well, what's an example of an antioxidant phytochemical? Well, grapes have resveratrol. Onions, quercetin. There's all these different vitamins that have fancy names, and you can get these from these.